Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shin. It's been almost 2 years in the making, but today we're excited to debut Where We Live's new theme song. And we'll speak with the band behind it and hear how they brought it to life. And later, we'll talk more about the indie music scene in Connecticut, including how local artists are making big waves across our small state. Joining me now in studio is Pete Brail and Holden Palmieri. They're part of the local band Ghostwoods, and they are the brains behind our new theme. Pete and Holden, welcome to Where We Live.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you.
And for our listeners, we know we have a lot of music fans out there. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any local bands or favorite songs, let us know. Give us a call, 888-720-9677. That's 888-720-WNPR. Or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. So, Holden, I want to start off with you. Tell us about how your band first formed, because you all knew each other before getting together, right?
Yeah, definitely. So a couple of us had played together in a local band called Breakthrough Frequencies. At this point, quite a while ago.
Yeah.
And kind of grew up playing at all of the, the space, the outer space, those kind of venues. Same with Pete. Pete was in a lot of local bands, working at some of those venues.
Yeah, I was working at several of those venues. That's probably how we spent a good fair amount of our time together before we started actually playing music in a band together.
Yeah.
Do you remember that moment?
It was probably at some point when Sonny introduced us while I was sitting in the booth, I bet.
Yeah, that sounds about right. My wife
Yeah.
also worked there for a while. And I do remember like a few shows where our bands kind of like shared the bill.
Yeah, that was probably the one in the ballroom was probably the most relevant one, where we were like, oh, hey, we're having a conversation with each other now and not just being like, hi, nice to hang out. Okay, bye.
It's like, hey, let's get coffee. And you never get coffee.
Yeah, exactly.
One of those.
Because I'm trapped in a booth taking tickets.
Well, I think oftentimes these sort of friendships or moments of connection, it just kind of happens. It's not usually planned. So were you surprised when it did?
Yeah, actually, I guess I'll speak on that one because you reached out to me about it. I was surprised. I was very excited though, because at that point in time, the band I was in hadn't been doing much, pretty much just kind of grinded to a halt. Mm. And then Holden was like, hey, do you want to play drums? And I went, oh, very much so. I'd very much like to do that. And then we got together and I felt comfortable pretty straight away. I already knew you and Michael, and then, we pretty hit it off pretty quick.
Yeah, it was very, just very natural. Yeah. Kind of like felt meant to be almost. You're just like, oh yeah, this makes sense.
Well, you gotta love those kismet moments, I think. And in music, it makes so much sense. And Holden, where did the name Ghostwoods come from?
So at the time, I was kind of going through a period in my life where I had kind of stopped making music. At least I had stopped performing it. Still recording it, but just kind of like for myself, for fun, and like as an outlet. And around that time, there was the Twin Peaks: The Return kind of like revival, and I was just so into it, and like it got me to revisit a lot of David Lynch films, and kind of like just get a more nuanced and sense of art, and like why I wanted to create art, and it re-inspired me. To start writing, and just as these songs started forming, and my friends were like, we should do something with this. The hardest part was coming up with a name,
right?
And in the past, like I had some frustration with previous band names where they're like too long to put on a flyer, or
the things you have to think about.
Yeah, there was we were called Breakthrough Frequencies, and like we heard some really funny. They were like, breakthrough for Quincy, grapefruit for what? Like just a lot of confusion. So I knew I wanted like one word. And just as I was rewatching the original run of Twin Peaks, it just kept popping out, Ghostwood.
Well, I love how atmospheric it is.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and it definitely like played a part in how I approached the the initial like songwriting.
Well, I was going to ask, how did you approach the initial songwriting for this?
Yeah, it was mostly like uh, more about like feeling, like what feeling did I want to get across,
Mm.
and yeah, like the vibe of it. A lot of themes that are present in David Lynch's work, like the light versus dark, really inspired me to kind of dive in.
Well, and Pete, as you guys work together, how did you develop your sound that makes Ghostwoods uniquely Ghostwoods and uniquely you?
I think it's just being in a room, like spending the time with each other and playing the music. It's just about like spending that time with the people you create with, and making time for it when you can. I think you'd probably agree.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, I mean it's really what it's about. We started playing music, and when I joined the band, they had him and then the other guys had a couple songs rough worked out. And I said, "Oh, okay, I'll add some drum parts to that," and then really enjoyed adding the drum parts to that. And then after that, a lot of our writing became, all right, well, we played the songs we already have. Let's just jam a little, see what happens. And then, whoops, we have 3 song ideas that we'll work on next time, and we've been hanging out for an extra 20 minutes. So pretty good.
I love that kind of whoops.
Yeah.
What about you, Holden?
Yeah, exactly what Pete said. It's really like everything comes from a spark, and the spark is our chemistry, and it's being in the room together and kind of just like seeing what happens. Like maybe you don't have anything prepared, but the second I strap the guitar on and like Pete starts kind of just going, it just very naturally, like all of a sudden we're doing something together, and then that either somebody says like, oh, that sounds cool, let's keep going with that, or you just move on to the next thing.
Yeah, or we laugh it off and
Right.
we do something else. We go, wow, that was quite silly.
You play a cover where you change all the words to something funny, or
Yeah.
just like it's really just like really the chemistry I think is the most important part of the band and our like creative spark.
I agree.
I wonder if it's kind of like the camera where it captures a certain type of truth, and when you're playing music, you can really tell if you're having fun or not.
Yeah, I would agree completely. I feel like, I mean, as far as we go, like, well, we can usually tell when we're into it and when we're not. I know we've had some ups and downs. We've been a band for 6 years at this point, if I'm not mistaken. So they happen. But yeah, it's really that's really it's like just again being together, that spark, running with it. It's a good one.
Well, and then you've both been in the music scene in Connecticut for a while. Can you describe what the evolution has been like? From punk rock to indie rock, it's really evolved over the years, right?
Yeah, I would agree. I'd say in Connecticut especially. I mean, I've been playing music for a long time since I was a youth. Same with you. And I've listened to a lot of different genres in my time, so I don't really discriminate what shows I go to. So I've seen a lot of wacky stuff over the years in Connecticut, and there's a lot of really cool bands. For years there was a huge hardcore scene that was really popular and like doing really well. Not to say it's not now, but it's just not as big as it used to be, sort of thing. There's a lot. I feel like there's a good bit more indie rock in Connecticut now. There is probably more melodic sort of punk stuff related or post-punk stuff, and not to say there's not heavy music. There's a lot of really good heavy music in Connecticut too as well, but it runs the gamut. There's like a lot of stuff around here, and it's nice because a lot of the bands don't discriminate based on that. We all kind of get to know each other. I've played so many mixed bill shows where you've got like a acoustic opener, and then you've got like a pop punk band, and then you've got like a like a heavy rock band, and then it goes back to a pop punk band sort of thing, like or like a folk rock to open the show, and then it gets progressively heavier. Like those happen, I feel like, more and more lately, just as there's fewer and fewer venues to play at. We're kind of like, well, these are the venues, let's do a show when we can, this is the day we can, all right, here we go.
Well, I love that kind of evolution because I feel like it makes sense to me as a non-musician, though, with all the bands. I feel like a lot of music, it crosses genres. It's really hard to fit a band into just one single genre. What was your experience, Holden, in terms of going through the evolution as you're in it?
Yeah, so I mean exactly what Pete said. I started playing shows in 2006, and I remember even the first show we played, it was like, what are we doing on this show? At first, it was kind of like, we don't even sound like any of these bands. But as we kind of like progressed and kept going, like we kind of realized like that's kind of what Connecticut music is. It's distinctly like not a lot of trend hopping, which you can see in like other scenes where they're like one thing becomes popular and then everyone's doing that thing.
Right.
In Connecticut, like everyone does their own thing, and for the most part, have been like really supportive with like you said, like mixed bills, like having bills where we could play with any band and it feels okay and it feels natural and almost like I think brings a better crowd out because everyone's willing to give it a shot. They're like, yeah, let's say it's like a variety show almost.
Well, I love the idea. It's like how you're describing. It's almost as if Connecticut music is a genre itself.
Yeah, okay, I could lean into that. It would be a big, messy, hard to describe genre, but it's a fun one for sure.
I mean, we're here for some fun music, and especially with what you were describing, there's so much crossing over, and because of the venues, you have these mixed bands coming in, and so with all of that, with all the different communities, different bands coming in. And with how the evolution has evolved, can you talk about some of the misconceptions around indie music? What are some of the misconceptions that you've come across?
For me, it really makes me think about kind of like I said about the trend hopping, right? So there's, I think a lot of times like it can be beneficial in a way with certain other scenes where you do have that thing that's popular, right? Like obviously the big one would be like grunge in Seattle in the 90s, yes. Right? Which a lot of great music came from that. And then, but to be fair, a lot of not so great music also came out of that. But I think not having like that one thing that Connecticut is known for, it's been a little hard. When people are like, well, is there even a scene in Connecticut? Like, what is the scene in Connecticut? There's a lot of like questions of like, well, what even is, I haven't heard of it. I haven't heard of this. So like, it could be kind of hard to just have like an easy label to slap on it or like, something that like, this is Connecticut music. So I think maybe like that misconception of certain people thinking like there's not a scene in Connecticut or like some bands skipping Connecticut on their tours. And, that I think that can be really hard.
Do you think that's changing, Pete?
So there's a couple standout bands from Connecticut that I feel like a bunch of people know, but it is I often if my out of state friends, does Connecticut still have a scene? Still have a scene because when a lot of people that I know when they think Connecticut scene, they think those hardcore bands from back in the day that were very popular. And now it's like, well, yeah, it's not just one thing anymore. Like Holden was saying, it's a bit more spread out now. It's not, like if you're in Connecticut, you play in a hardcore band, you get popular at the end. Now it's like, you play in a band, you do what you do, and you see how it goes. And the big, I would agree. I think probably the biggest misconception about the Connecticut scene is that there isn't one or that it's lacking. I mean, it's waxed and waned over the years,
right?
As any music scene anywhere ever, but it's here. It's very present, and it's pretty strong. I mean, there's still a lot of bands out there. Still a lot of people that I know playing music. Thankfully,
yeah. And I hear a lot of that, and I definitely feel the presence. Especially, we do have Connecticut-based musicians come on the show and talk about sort of the intimacy that they see here in Connecticut versus other places. Perhaps is something that I've heard from different musicians. And of course, our listeners they've got their ear to the ground for sure with this. We got a comment from Jane who shared with us on Facebook and says, Heartbeat Music Festival was created just because of all of the great musical talent in Connecticut. It was co-created by Riverfront Recapture and a local band, the Professors of Sweet, Sweet Music. It's 3 stages of original local music of all genres. It takes place on Mortison Riverfront Plaza in downtown Hartford. And for you all, if you're planning all the way to early summer plans, it's free and family-friendly, Saturday, June 14th, noon to 9 p.m. Well, thank you so much, Jane, for sharing that with us. We appreciate it. And I want to touch on, I think especially with the last couple of years, a lot of us have gone through sort of this maybe rediscovery of different music during the pandemic because of all these reasons. How did you all navigate sort of performing and creating music during that time? Holden?
I mean, that was, of course, a very challenging time. I know, like, at the time, a lot of the bands that we had been playing with, throughout 2019 kind of just dissolved, just stopped being bands, and we knew early on like we didn't want to do that. We're like, nope.
That was a discussion we had pretty early on.
The people that we have to create music.
Yeah.
It is like, for me, it's therapy. It is my outlet. And I needed it more than ever. And we resolved to kind of upgrade our gear and our practice spot. And we were kind of one of the first bands to be like, we're going to do live streams. Like, we don't know how we're going to do it yet, but we're going to figure it out. And like,
and the first one was a little bumpy, but it worked.
First one was bumpy. The second one was great. You know, we
good.
ran it through our mixer. Like, the sound was good. We made sure the video was good. We practiced for it. You know, at the time, like even on the live stream, we were wearing masks, except for me, just because I had to.
Yeah, when it was real bad, we weren't even in the same room, but we were still sending ideas via, sending stuff back and forth on our computers, and then we had a music video we made where we each filmed ourselves individually in our apartments and put that up. Is that on our YouTube?
Yeah. It's for the song Dead Wax. The live in quarantine version.
Yeah.
Nice. Do you think that forced you to be creative in a different way?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Absolutely. And actually pushed us to, as we upgraded, to say, well, let's work on an album. We worked on the album throughout all of 2020, and wrapping up now, but we're still. It really pushed us to not only to kind of dive further into the DIY, like we're going to do this ourselves out of necessity at the time. We didn't know.
Yeah, it's
Could
true.
we go to a studio? Could we go? We couldn't play a show. Like it was weird. It was strange. Strange times.
Well, then strange times leads to some cool times here. We'll obviously have to ask you guys to describe the process of putting together the new theme music for Where We Live.
Oh, absolutely. So coming out of 2020, we had gone back to playing shows. We did the Middletown Pride Festival. And it kind of kept building and building. We had our busiest year. I want to say it was 2023.
Yeah.
We played the Space Ballroom with the Spill Canvas, and then Soft Cult and
two
Soft Blue
huge,
Shimmer.
awesome shows.
I remember just feeling like this is great. We're back, and we're busy.
Yeah.
And right after that show, we had actually heard from you guys, and we actually, like, at the time we couldn't even believe it. We're like, oh my God.
Well, we couldn't believe it that you responded to our email, so there's that.
We were like, this sounds amazing. This sounds like an amazing opportunity. Like, let's do it. And I know from there, we started our initial kind of like Zoom meetings, and like what I remember the most is really wanting to get a feel for the energy that we're looking for, going into like this new era of the show.
And how did you approach creating a theme that matches the spirit of the show?
Well, actually, we got pretty excited afterwards. Did the first Zoom conversation, or was it after a couple of emails?
I think it was after the first Zoom.
Yeah, it was after the first Zoom. We were excited, and we were both sitting in the same room together, which happened to be our recording and practice spot as well. And we're like, I don't know, let's work on it now.
Nothing like a little immediacy.
We just finished talking to him. We're sitting here. We're in our room. We have all of our instruments. Let's just like mess around and just throw a few darts at the wall and see what happens. So I sat down to my kit and he grabbed his guitar, and then we played something that was too fast. You
were excited.
That's exactly right. Now that was my follow-up. Too fast. We relaxed a little bit and calmed down and let the excitement wash over us. And then we made some edits, slowed it down a bit, and we had a good bit of interaction with the team here, working out the song, making sure, like Holden said, we have the vibe right for the whole thing, making sure that it worked on the radio, making sure that you liked it, of course, pretty important. So it's that we kind of went straight away with that, and it was a process of up and down, but it was nice. We were very happy and very excited to do it, and then once it was done, now especially today, the payoff is fantastic. We're very excited.
Well, we're excited to hear that, and excited to ask Holden, who brought his guitar here. Can you play us a little bit of that initial riff and show us how you put it together? Yeah.
So kind of just like walking through it, like Pete said, we got off of the call. We were amped up, and we're just like, yeah. And like I remember, we had talked about like like punk rock and like pop punk and just like energy, and so that's what we were going for. And yeah, we did it a little too fast at first, a little too complicated.
We were excited.
Like I think the riff was very like. And we're just like, we're playing off of each other. We're just going at it. And yeah, I think the second revision was like, okay, but people are going to need to talk over this. And also we needed room for our lead guitar player, Michael, to put his thing on it, which ended up, it's personally, he's probably going to hate that I say this, but it's so catchy. And it's just so
truly, I think it's the defining riff. I mean, really,
yeah, it's exactly what it needed. And I think he came up with it so fast.
Well, shout out to Michael.
Yeah. Sorry, can't be here, Mike.
We slowed it down. I went to more chords, kind of just like. Of course, like it leaves so much room, and yeah, and there were just there. It seemed like there was so many places that it could go,
right.
Which I liked about it. That it kind of like as we simplified it, but it was like there's still that impression of like you could see where it could go.
Well, even just you playing here, I want to hear it continue.
Right.
And we'll be continuing this conversation after a quick break here. But just for our listeners, that we are listening to Pete Brail and Holden Palmieri of the band Ghostwoods, who are here with me today, and they're the creators of Where We Live's band, or Where We Live's brand spanking new theme song, and they'll be staying with us for the hour. And you can find a link to more of their work on our website at ctpublic.org/where we live. And listeners, obviously want to hear from you. If you have a local favorite band, give them a shout out. Give us a call, 888-720-9677, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. The average cost for a single ticket to a top concert tour is now $122.84. This is according to Polestar, a live music trade publication. But seeing great music doesn't mean you have to break the bank. Today, we're talking about local indie music with big impacts. Joining us now is Brendan Toller. He's the Director of Operations and Initiative at WPKN Community Radio Station in Bridgeport. Brendan, welcome to Where We Live.
Good morning, Catherine. Good morning, listeners.
And still with us is Pete Brail and Holden Palmieri from the band Ghostwoods. And listeners, let us know if you have any questions or if you want to shout out to your favorite local band, 888-720-9677, or leave us a comment on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. So, Brendan, before working at WPKN, you wore many different hats working in both film and music. Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. I grew up as a young, questing human being in central Connecticut, Portland, Connecticut, just wondering what was on the other side of the Connecticut River. So, I went to Hampshire College where I got a bachelor's in film, and made a movie called I Need That Record, which sort of chronicled imperiled record stores in 2008. Featured Record Express from Middletown, Connecticut, and Trash American Style from Danbury, Connecticut. I then went on to make a film with Danny Fields, who discovered and signed the Stooges and the Ramones. And at that very same time, ended up falling in love with New Haven and the music and visual art scene and the true intergenerational scene that was here. And as I was, pitching different projects, documentary projects for what seemed like 100 years, I was like, I want to get involved in the music scene. It started as a fan, and then I started booking shows, and I started playing shows, and then I started getting jobs in media where I could, have an impact, and that's where I am today, Catherine.
Well, I'm going to start using the phrase questing. That is so good. Yeah, and then this is a great sort of a side quest, I think, as well, having this conversation. Not to mean it's not as important as a main quest, but I feel like oftentimes side quests is what leads you to your destiny, in which is to have this conversation today. And, and I think we hear this a lot from when we're talking to local artists, is when you think about making big music or big films, a lot of people think you have to go to the major cities like Nashville, New York, or Los Angeles when we're talking about music. But it seems like there really has been a thriving music scene here in Connecticut with the ups and downs, but like every evolution, you go through the roller coaster of different music scenes. Can you describe what you've seen here in Connecticut and how you've seen it sort of change and evolve?
I think it's no coincidence that as we see, no offense, media decaying,
Hmm.
we're seeing the world decaying, but we're seeing these local scenes and local communities get empowered and emerge and become more powerful and more present. And New Haven, which I think is where Ali Burnett and I are working and located, it's a continuum, right? It started with probably Ron's Place in the 1970s, a local punk club that really set the foundation for a lot of the older generation that attend these shows and are active in the scene. And I just think, whether it's due to the economy or due to people liking a smaller, more tight-knit scene, more intimate shows, you're seeing thriving local music scenes. And, it's not just musicians that make up a scene, it's photographers, it's filmmakers, it's writers. And it really reminds me of the East Village in the 1960s. And what people would tell me while I was making Danny Says is like, Brendan, you realize it was only like 40 people. So this whole conception that, a scene is this huge thing, it's not. It just takes different perspectives and capturing from every angle, musicians, photographers, all of it.
Well, and with that in mind too, we mentioned at the top of this segment, especially earlier, we were talking about venues and where to go and find music and listen to music and find your community. And we talked about earlier at the top of this segment just how much it costs to see a concert nowadays when you want to see big music in big venues. What is this looking like for local shows?
I'm somebody who look, last year I went and saw the Stones, I saw Neil Young, so I paid some of those big ticket prices, but the majority of the shows that I see every week are anywhere from $5 to $10, and they're at places like Best Video, shout out in Hamden, who are fundraising now to keep their doors open. Cafe 9 in New Haven, when we had the State House in New Haven, certainly the Spaceland Ballroom. All different venues. I mean, I'm speaking from a Hamden, New Haven perspective, but for me, it's more exciting to see an artist and a band as they're emerging and they're becoming, and they don't have it quite figured out yet. And there's a lot of exciting directions things could go. And I know we're going to bring her on in a second, but even being friends and seeing somebody like Ali Burnett sort of evolve over the years has been just super sweet.
Well, and watching that evolving, are you also seeing more diversity in indie music over the years?
I sure hope so. I mean, what I like about the New Haven scene is that there really isn't any rules. And for me, there's no silos. Um, I can hang and be integrated with the hip hop, old school hip hop scene as much as I can the rock and roll scene. And the lingua franca there is DJing.
Mm.
We all like hot records that get people dancing.
Right.
And I did about 7 years consecutively as a DJ with a night called Shake and Vibrate, where I did a lot of funk, soul, glam, and punk, vinyl 45s. And thankfully, New Haven right now is really just burgeoning with DJ culture. And that's great because you get to be inside the music, hang out, socialize with friends, meet new people. Whereas a show, you're maybe more focused on what's going on the stage. So, yeah, there's all different kinds of scenes, and they're very easy and welcoming and open to traverse.
Well, and I'm very happy now to introduce Ali Burnett from the local band Ali Burnett and the Proven Winners. Ali, welcome to Where We Live.
Thank you for having me. Good morning.
Good morning, and tell us a little bit about your music journey because you actually relocated to New Haven to pursue music.
I did. I had been living in New Hampshire on the Vermont, Massachusetts, New Hampshire border in Keene, and playing a lot of music in Brattleboro and Western Mass with a band that I had called the Proud Flesh with my friend Pat Dalton, who now co-owns Sans Serif, um, in New Haven with Sam Carlson. And we got a really great opportunity, weekly residency gig in New Canaan. And we thought, this is going back 10 years and coming out of the last, or actually more than that, and coming out of the last, one of the big recessions of '08. And, we couldn't afford to live in a place like New York or Boston or LA.
Mhm.
And we thought New Haven's right between home base of New Hampshire, and I'm originally from New York, and it's right halfway in between. And it looks like a great place to build something, is what we all kind of thought to ourselves. It looks like this town might just need a little bit of gasoline in the tank to go somewhere. And we know a lot of people who might want to come here. And we had the opportunity because of our band to just sort of do live sound gigs and play music and just throw ourselves full force into that.
What has it been like since you were able to sort of fill up that tank of gas and be a part of that fuel in the music scene?
It's been incredible to watch New Haven grow over the last decade and change. I mean, it's kind of unrecognizable from what it looked like when I moved here. And I know other people in this chat this hour have been here longer than I, but and can probably attest to that even going further back. Um, but also to piggyback off what Brennan was saying, you don't have to get. It's not a city where you get pigeonholed. I've definitely some of my strongest musical opportunities were playing banjo with local hip hop artist Chesky Ramos.
Well, and Brendan and Pete from Ghostwoods, it sounds like there's a lot of paralleling. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think that's an astute observation on Allie's part. I mean, I've been hanging out in New Haven since I was a kid, going to Toad's Place or the Space, or playing at either venue. And I agree. It's definitely grown. It's definitely, I feel, lately more of a community than before. It was a scene before, and there's always been music and there's always been people playing, even since well before I was involved in it. I mean, I met a lot of older people when I was working at the Space and the Outer Space a number of years ago that introduced me to older bands in the Connecticut scene that I didn't have a clue about. And so it is cool to see it has definitely grown, and I think the community aspect of it has definitely been growing lately. And I think like was said earlier, with the decay of kind of a lot of things, it has helped build community. At least there's some silver lining, I guess, if you want to call it that.
Sure. Well, and Brendan, especially with what Ali just shared, as well as Pete, that we know the music industry can be really competitive. Do we see that here in Connecticut?
I sure hope not. I'd like to think that we're all supportive and we're all like, yeah, use my amp, use my drum set. What's the point? I mean, that's why I continued on here as opposed to New York. And New York seemed very, as I said before, siloed and maybe a little competitive and also very expensive. I mean, let's cut to the chase here. What a local scene always needs anywhere to get started is cheap places to live cheap places to rehearse and party where the authorities are not going to bother you.
Amen.
Hmm.
I'd love to piggyback into that if I could.
Yeah, of course.
Moving here, I never felt any kind of gatekeeping
Mm.
from like the older musicians who were older, like, 10 years my senior. It always felt like whenever I would come out and do whatever I was doing, everyone was just excited that there was another band
Mm.
playing. Like there was fresh music. Like New Haven has always, in my experience, been really hungry for original music and art, and that's one thing among others that has really like kept me here since moving here. Because I, you know, people, do you like New Haven? I'm like, I really must have been here for 13 years. I
Hmm.
must like it.
Well, and Ali, how can you describe what it means to build a fan base here in Connecticut, especially since just talking about there is a hunger. So, what has it been like to build a fan base?
Yeah, I mean, it's been very gratifying and humbling. It's incredible to watch people still be interested in the music I do after all these years and still approach me um, and be like, wow, I can't believe we're playing with you. I'm like, well,
Mm.
me? I'm just doing this. But, all it takes, like Brendan was saying about hearing from New York, that there was only like 40 people. All it really takes is just like some people who are really committed to it and a solid place to party away from the authorities.
Right.
Um, but like, I, I don't think I could move to LA or New York necessarily and have this. Like,
Hmm.
my friends at Sans Serif are recording our music at the moment, and um, they're people that I know. Like, I moved here with Pat, and now they're the ones who are recording everybody, and a scene just grows because people like doing what they do and they like being friends. I think a lot of the New Haven arts and music community, generally speaking, are friends, quote unquote, outside of work,
Mm.
as it were. It's not just, hey, let's network like some of these major cities are, like, hey, let's get together and talk about like business, business, business.
Right.
In New Haven, it does seem to be more like, you want to grab a bite to eat and we can just talk about our lives, which is kind of like, to me, what being an artist is having a life that's as interesting as the art you're making. And I think in Connecticut, you can have that.
Well, and because we're talking about all sort of the physical spaces and the physical communities, and Holden, before we go to break, I wanted to jump to you real quick because earlier you guys talked about being able to use live streams during the pandemic and the shutdown, connecting with um, old fans and new fans, and social media means you can reach a lot of potential people that you normally would not have reached. So, but how many? But many musicians have been critical of musical services for good reason. I think like Spotify, of because of how they compensate artists. What are your thoughts about that?
It's one of those necessary evils. It's like if you're not on Spotify, you're kind of automatically alienating. There's a huge number of people who just won't hear the music. They won't.
Right.
There's not a convenient way. Um, you know, do we get maybe like 10 cents every year? Yeah, like that is the reality.
That's being generous. I think they gave Weird Al enough money to get a sandwich. I'm pretty sure that's what Weird Al said.
That'd be
and
nice.
He's a very famous man.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there is that unfortunate like necessary evil. Like you have to be able to get the music out there and be accessible,
Mm-hmm.
while also kind of like retaining your ownership, but also your integrity. It can be challenging, and you have platforms like Bandcamp
Right.
but even none of them are perfect. None of that.
Right.
I wish there was a better or even like a local option. it's a great idea for somebody to work on.
Exactly. We'll take a note on that, and we will be chatting more about breaking into music after coming back from break. You've been listening to Allie Burnett from the band Allie Burnett and the Proven Winners, Brendan Toller from WPKN, and also Pete Brail and Holden Palmieri from the band Ghostwoods, who are the creators of our new theme music. And listeners, let us know if you're part of the Connecticut music scene, and let us know who your favorite artists are right now. We got a comment from Persephone on Facebook, who gives a shout out to the Isaac Montz Collective. Thank you so much, Persephone. Join the conversation, 888-720-9677, or find us on Facebook and Twitter at Where We Live. This is Where We Live from Connecticut Public Radio. I'm Catherine Shen. When you think of breaking into music and making it big, what comes to mind? Award shows, sold-out concerts, topping the charts? For some Connecticut musicians, success in music looks a lot different. It's all about connecting with the community. With us still are local artists Pete Brail and Holden Palmieri from Ghostwoods. Also with us is Allie Burnett from Allie Burnett and the Proven Winners, and Brendan Toller, who is with WPKN. I want to start off this conversation, Brendan. Are we seeing new generations of indie rockers breaking into the scene? What does that look like for you?
Oh, completely. I mean, that's like one of the most exciting things about living in New Haven is just when I think we've hit, peak scene, there's a new 20-year-old band doing something totally different that we've never heard before in a different style that isn't very prevalent here. I will say for me, there's making the film, writing the song, playing the show, making the album. But to be on a higher plane for me, I've very much enjoyed being a facilitator and a conduit, whether that's helping book shows or make flyers or connect people. And I just want to give a little shout out to WPCAN, which just started a new video and broadcast session series to feature and elevate Connecticut and tri-state area talent. So you can check that out, Gold Sounds on YouTube or podcast platforms. We feature the excellent band from New Haven, Wally.
Nice. And Allie, with your experience as well, are you seeing new rockers rise?
Yeah, I am. It's really cool. I can't even remember all of the names
Right.
of some of these bands that have hit me up in the last few months to say, hey, let's play a show together. And that's really exciting too. And also watching young music change and watching, like Brendan was talking about, the strong DJ culture and the dance scene, seeing a lot of kids that are the age, like in their young 20s, who are favoring turntables instead of guitars, but it's still just indie music happening.
And really quickly here, Brendan, because you're in a space on a platform where you see a lot of younger musicians or musicians who get a chance to showcase their talent. Talk about WPKN's role in building that community through music.
PKN had a GM search all last year, and when it got down to the finals, I spoke with a lot of my sort of mentors and advisors, and the reason I decided to take a job like that was to be able to hand it over to the next generation, that freeform radio, the values, the ethos, and the power and the pull that it still has is worthy of the next generation and is worthy of this scene, for it to be a real service and a real sort of beacon for the arts to be able to shine.
Well, and Holden, building on what Brendan just said too, is that something that you're seeing as well? New indie artists coming up?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're playing with them all the time. One of them I know we talk about a lot, but you already know what I'm going to say. The problem with kids today. They're
a blast.
amazing. played with them a few times and just sing their praises whenever we can.
Yeah, truly, like as far as the younger bands that are, I mean, there's more than just them. There's quite a few younger bands doing really
Right.
cool stuff right now, but they're just the one that's been probably in front of us the most and we've spent the most stage time with.
I mean, I'm always so impressed with what they can do because I was not doing that at their age. And then I feel bad. And I'm like, what am I doing?
I definitely I didn't have the confidence that to some of them they're just so authentically themselves and like create the music they want to create and that's so admirable.
It's incredible to watch, truly.
Yeah, no, it gives me a lot of energy and hope, I think, especially with the arts and whatnots. And because we're having so much fun, we only have a couple minutes left, but I do want to get everyone's perspective here in terms of, we've touched on a lot of things today, local music, how to break into music, venues to go to locally. What are some of the things that you hope listeners take away from this conversation today? Brendan, we'll start with you.
Get up and go do it, I think, and don't stop and know that there is an audience waiting for you and a bunch of musicians and artists that are waiting to take you under their wing and hang out and continue this continuum.
So turn that side quest into a main quest is what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Ali, what about yourself? What are some thoughts you hope to leave with our listeners today, or maybe even the young musicians who could be listening?
Sure. Well, first, shameless self-plug. My band, Ali Burnett and the Proven Winners, are playing at Cafe 9 on the 23rd of this month. But I would also like to say, if you think you can't sing, it just means you don't like your own voice. Everyone can sing. And just because you don't think you can play guitar doesn't mean you can't. Just go out there and have fun. Practice, and have fun. That's the most important thing, is having fun. If you're not having fun, you're not doing anything.
I love the have fun part because I think that's a lot of people's New Year's theme is to have more fun this year. So appreciate that, Ali, because I think that will resonate with a lot of people. Pete, what are your thoughts that you would like to leave with our listeners today?
Support local bands. Any and all of them. If you got some people, if you're around, especially if you're in New Haven, there's a band playing almost every night somewhere. If you don't have anything to do, find a show, go pay the $5, hang out, and maybe find your new favorite band.
Sounds like a plan. What about you, Holden?
So first, also some kind of self promo.
Yeah,
so
I forgot that.
April 24th, playing at Cafe 9. We have a new album coming out called Burn It Down. We have a tiny desk session that we put up as a submission, which is on our YouTube. If you go to ghostwoods.net, it is all there. All to just say that we are here. We're all here. There's a community. We're all just kind of waiting to be discovered. Come see us, all of us.
Well, we are glad that you are all here with us today. Thank you so much for sharing your story and your music with us. You've been listening to Pete Brail and Holden Palmieri, who are members of the band Ghostwoods. Go check them out. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for everything.
And thank you for our new theme song. You are also listening to Ali Burnett from Ali Burnett and the Proven Winners. Ali, thank you so much for being with us as well.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
And you were also listening to Brendan Toller, who's the Director of Operations and New Initiatives at the WPKN Community Radio Station in Bridgeport. So make sure you listen in. Brendan, thank you so much for joining us today.
That's right. Thank you, everyone.
So we've heard some great local music this hour, including Pretty Boys by Ghostwoods, The Lovely End by Cassie's Crutch, Where's My Deanie by Ovlov and Camera, I'm on a Roll by Ali Burnett. I'm Catherine Shen. Today's show is produced by Tess Terrible. Our technical producer is Dylan Reyes. Download Where We Live anytime on your favorite podcast app. Thank you so much for listening to us and happy listening to new music, everyone.